Okay, so for the primitive spinal reflexes, again, flexor withdrawal, cross extension, traction, Moreau, startle, and grasp. I could ask you a question on the exam that says the following are all primitive reflexes except, right? You can see how I can. Okay. So flexor withdrawal, basically you touch and you irritate, you give an irritating stimulus to the bottom of the foot. I have a video somewhere when I do peds where they actually take an ice cube and they put it on the bottom of the foot and you know, it's noxious, so the baby withdraws the leg. And it's a reflex. It happens very quickly. They don't really have control over it. And sometimes if you surprise the baby, they cry. They're like, wow, don't do that. I was so peaceful here. Okay. At the same time, this one flexes up. This one extends. Okay. So when you do this reflex, I'm looking for flexion here and extension on the opposite side. Remember I said that these reflexes, when they become integrated, they're not gone. They're still there. So there are little tiny motor programs already embedded in your spinal cord that can be used for functional movement later as you grow older. Okay? And those little programs, your brain says, I want to take a step, and there's that reflex. Hold that for me. And it just modulates. Okay? So that's why these programs simplify the work of the brain. Because if we had to process all those joint angles and acceleration, deceleration, synergistic movements, stabilizing, we would probably not be able to move. We'll be like I did in the class. Okay. So that's flexor withdrawal, cross extension. Traction, but traction, basically you kind of grab the forearms of the baby, and if you kind of just give a little tug, they will pull up just like that. Because that's exactly how they do it. And then the moral is, again, you sit them up and you kind of bring them back a little bit so their head kind of drops a little bit, and it's just like a startup. They do this kind of thing and cry. And they do cry. Yes, they do cry. It's not fun for them, and I'm sure it's at the same time as it is a reflex. It's pretty frightening, and it's a very similar response to when you go up behind somebody. You'll get that same kind of startle, and that, remember, stays through life, which is why we all watch Jackass. Anyway, no, we don't. I don't. And then grasp has two components. There's palmar and then there's plantar. And then palmar is you just put pressure in the palm of the hand and the baby grabs onto you. Okay. And then same thing with the foot. The toes will kind of curl under. They're feet, let's face it, like their hands. And they'll try and grab you with their toes. And when those things are integrated, when you go through motor milestones, it's fascinating to me how the reflex becomes integrated just at the time they're developing the next step in their fine motor reflexes, like letting go, right? So they have this palmar grasp, and as soon as that starts to get integrated, boom, they can start to let them go. You know they can't. They got this thing in their hand, and they can't let go of it. You have to before they can let go of it, right? And then when they develop and integrate those reflexes, that's when those motor milestones start to appear, and they develop that control. It's fascinating how the timing of it is. Really. It really is. I'm the only one that's excited here.
The grasp one, is that called the same thing for the foot?
It's plantar and palmar grasp. Palmar grasp, plantar grasp. And there's a little bit of difference in their time of integration, and I think it really, if you take it and align it up with release and grasp for fine motor, quote-unquote, development in a baby versus standing and walking, it kind of is time when it's integrated, that's when those skills start to emerge, and the same thing with the feet. When it's integrated, that's when they start to get up and try and take the step. Very interesting. Anyway, so those are the primitive spinal reflexes, and you know how I can ask a question on that. Tonic reflexes, those reflexes, usually the stimulus is something through the head. And so if I were to be with an infant and I want to test asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, I literally just turn the head. If I turn the head, what is my expected response? And there you go. And the lower extremities also. So it's okay. So it's going to be matching, right? pelvis strength. Symmetrical tonic neck reflex is when you bring the head down, the upper extremities flex and lower extremities extend. When you bring the head up, the upper extremities extend, lower extremities flex. So what I kind of make that analogous to is when the baby begins to get into quadruped, or that tripod position that they get into. That's like that, right? And so they start getting up and they start rocking and they start lifting their head up so the arms can stay. But sometimes they collapse. So think about it. They extend the head, the arms extend, the legs are flexed, holding them up, and if they drop their head, they can, collapse and do the opposite.
And the legs would extend out at that point?
Well, they probably would then go like, I don't have kids.
They have the kids are crawling, they have like a little, like my daughter's dad, where like he would push it down and it would roll forward, so you have to like look up to keep see it roll off.
Yeah.
So it's looking down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you watch, and I did do peds for a very brief period of time. Thank God for the children. But it's just fascinating to watch babies move and how their motor patterns are just numerous. They just have hundreds and hundreds of ways to do things and how they practice movement. And how now, if you look at rehab and how we're addressing patients with problems, we're really kind of going back to that same type of therapy. We make people practice.
You think about babies, they just do it over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, I know, a lot of times you put your baby down on the floor, right? You're kind of watching them and they're kind of laying there. And, when they can't roll, it's not a big deal because, you kind of watch them, they can't go very far. Okay, but the first time, you'll look down and, oh my gosh, they rolled over. Okay, I missed it, I didn't even see it. Well, then within a day, they're like going over and over and over, and you can't take your eye off for a second because they've rolled all the way down to the other wall. Okay, so they just keep going, and then you'll put them back and they'll go over and over, and they just keep doing it over and over and over.
Have you ever had a baby play that, drop the ball and you pick it up, drop it again?
The dogs do that too. Puppies do that.
Yes, over and over.
Puppies
over
like to do
and
this.
It's funny every time. It's like, really? Something's fun for me after 2 reps. So and it's interesting now, if you look at therapy, it's really starting to, and I wonder why it took us so long to get there. But it's very much so like taking people through developmental postures and whatever they're doing, ADL function, and just having them do it over and over and over again, and the brain changes when you do that. So it is amazing how it's kind of moving back into that direction of practice. And that's why Dr. C loves that practice video, because it's very apropos. Symmetrical tonic labyrinthine reflexes reflex the effect of the surface on the body, right? So if she's lying flat on her back, she's more extended. And you must have seen this in babies. When we say a baby's extended, they're still like this, right? They're still flexed. And then when they're in their stomach, their little butts up in the air, and they're so cute, and their arms tucked under them. That's the influence of the tone. If they're on their stomach, they're more flexed. Little butt sticks up in the air. If they're on their back, they're not extended. Why this becomes important is when we have a patient that has an upper motor neuron issue, okay, and we have them on their back, and we're asking them to flex up the leg, and they can't do it. It's like, darn, I know they can do this. I know they have that muscle. Move the position, because it could be that reflex that's holding the leg and making it so hard for them to lift it. Put them on their side and use a powder board. And now all of a sudden, if you take away that little influence of that reflex, they might be able to flex the leg. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because those reflexes will have an influence on your patients with upper motor neuron. They will reappear. Again, they usually become more integrated, but they still can influence things and make things harder for patients. Okay. So if you're not getting the results you want, change it a little bit and see if that makes a difference. And then positive supporting, that's where you take the baby and you kind of bounce their feet a little bit on the surface and they extend and stand up. this.
Then that goes away.
If you like rub the top of their foot on like on a table, if you're holding them and they rub the top of the foot, they step up onto the table. I mean, it's pretty amazing what little, and to me it's like, oh, that's a little rudimentary program in there.
Yeah.
That's in there. Isn't that amazing? So they actually have taken babies and they put them on little tiny treadmills with little tiny suspension devices, because they obviously can't hold themselves up for any length of time, and they've done treadmill walking with them to see if they walk sooner. Why would you do that to a baby? I don't know. But anyway, they in fact did walk sooner. They did walk sooner, but it was only by a couple of months, and in the long term it didn't make a difference. It's not like those guys being super athletes or anything. They ended up actually the other group ended up catching up that did the regular research. But they'll put anything on the treadmill these days. Now, associated reaction is something that I have used with patients, and that's where if I have an involved side from a central nervous system issue, and I resist one side, I can cause an involuntary response on the other side. It is involuntary, but it is a response that if I keep practicing and incorporating into functional things, I might actually train to start operating, just like a reflex becomes integrated. And it's called an associated reaction. So if I have a flaccid extremity and I can't get anything going in that extremity, I will actually move to the opposite side and start working the opposite extremity and see if I can get some overflow, some associated reaction, and even remember those interneurons on the spinal cord always communicating with the opposite side and with segments above and below. Those interneurons, that's where that integration starts. So there's always communication with the other side, so there's always a little bit of overflow to the other side. You may not see anything, but it's there. So you can use that to help with the treatment, in addition to other things which I'll teach you as we go through this time. Right. Here she's flaccid. This is intact, so I'll do voluntary movements here and hopefully get some tone over here. So I'll put this in a position that gravity is not so overwhelming. So I wouldn't have her lying out like this because I won't see anything. But I might have her sitting and with the arm supported on a pillow or on a powder board in this position, and I'll have her work this arm and see if I can, okay, now try and do both and see if I can get a little bit of tone on the other side. That's just one thing that you can do. There's many things that we're going to learn about, but that's just one that you can use. And I have used that somewhat successfully. Kind of do that too with the lower extremity, and I use bridging as my key to that. Because, you know, you're getting overflow from the lower extremity into the other extremity. At the same time, you're actually forcing the extremity to work a little bit. So it's a double kind of benefit. Okay. So those are your primitive and brain stem reflexes. Again, they become integrated if you're going to be going into peds or for the licensure exam or even for my exam. You need to know those integration periods. I'm not going to be like cool about it. I'm not going to say 16 months to 4 days, which one is it? Up or down, yay or nay, bad or good. But grossly, especially if you're going to be working in a pediatric environment, you need to know those holds. You need to know when you're looking at a baby, is this normal or not? Okay. All right, any questions on what we've done today? I have my watch on upside down, so I have no idea. It's 3 o'clock. To me, it looks like 8. I'm definitely here way too long. Anybody ready for checkoffs?
Yeah.
For
Really?
checkoffs.
Actually, I used to have a student. She was hilarious. I would actually teach it, and then she'd question. Can we do checkoffs? Seriously? On this, what we just did right now?
Yeah, right.